On October 18, 1939, the early stages of World War II continued to evolve. The Battle of the Atlantic was in full swing as both sides tried to secure control of crucial maritime supply lines. The day also saw notable diplomatic moves, particularly involving neutral nations caught between the Axis and Allied powers. The actions of this day illustrated the growing importance of both naval warfare and diplomacy in shaping the broader conflict. Military events, U-boat warfare and naval tactics. One of the significant military events of the day was the continued escalation of the U-boat campaign in the Atlantic. German submarines, under the command of Admiral Karl Donitz, were intensifying their attacks on Allied shipping. This strategic focus on disrupting Britain's maritime supply lines was central to Germany's plan to weaken the island nation by cutting off critical resources. On this day, several Allied merchant ships were targeted, further demonstrating the deadly efficiency of the German U-boat fleet. In particular, Germany issued a declaration warning that neutral ships traveling in Allied convoys would be sunk without warning. This marked a dramatic escalation in Germany's naval policy, as it now extended its aggressive targeting to include neutral ships that might be carrying supplies to the Allies. This policy heightened tensions with neutral nations such as the United States and Norway, who were already dealing with the fallout from earlier naval incidents involving their ships. Diplomatic and geopolitical developments. Neutrality under pressure. Germany's declaration regarding neutral ships in Allied convoys was a bold diplomatic move that increased pressure on nations trying to maintain neutrality. For countries like Norway and the United States, this created a dilemma. They were forced to navigate the increasingly hostile waters of the Atlantic, where their merchant fleets were now vulnerable to German attacks, even if they were not directly involved in the conflict. In the United States, President Franklin D. Roosevelt responded by declaring U.S. waters off-limits to submarines from warring nations. This move aimed to protect American interests and avoid further entanglements in the European conflict. While the United States was still officially neutral, incidents like these showed that neutrality was becoming harder to maintain as the war progressed. In Scandinavia, the heads of state from Finland, Norway, and Sweden met to discuss the growing tensions in the region, particularly regarding Finland's uneasy relationship with the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union's actions in the region, particularly its occupation of parts of eastern Poland and its designs on Finland, were causing concern among these neutral nations, who feared being drawn into the conflict. International reactions and media coverage. The press in Britain, Germany, and neutral countries widely covered these developments. In Britain, newspapers focused on the threat posed by the German U-boat fleet, particularly the extension of attacks to neutral shipping. British public opinion was increasingly rallying around the need to enhance naval defenses and strengthen cooperation with the Royal Navy to protect merchant convoys. In Germany, Nazi propaganda emphasized the effectiveness of the U-boat campaign and the decision to target neutral ships in Allied convoys. This was portrayed as a necessary measure to combat Britain's economic lifelines, further justifying the German strategy of economic warfare. In the United States, the New York Times ran stories highlighting Roosevelt's response to the German threats and the growing concerns about American neutrality. The question of how long the U.S. could remain neutral in the face of increasing aggression from both Germany and Japan was becoming a central issue in American political discourse. Projections. The impact of October 18th on the future of the war. The events of October 18, 1939, had significant implications for the future of World War II. The escalation of the U-boat campaign and the decision to target neutral shipping marked a turning point in naval warfare. As Germany continued to pursue its strategy of cutting off Britain's supply lines, the war at sea would become increasingly critical. The Allied response, particularly the development of convoys and improved anti-submarine warfare tactics, would be essential to countering this threat. For the neutral nations, the pressures of staying out of the conflict were mounting. The diplomatic moves of this day highlighted the delicate balance these countries had to maintain as they sought to avoid being drawn into the war while protecting their national interests. The U.S., in particular, would continue to face challenges in maintaining its neutrality, as incidents like these pushed the nation closer to involvement in the conflict.